So guys, you're all very, very welcome to this IoD Surrey 859 for, I think it's probably our third or fourth 859 now. And the idea of the 859 is that we are really trying to express our foundational values of integrity and enterprise and focus on building quality relationships where directors and business owners get an edge from each other and provide that edge to each other. So in that sort of context, what we're going to be doing today is sharing insights, experiences. This meeting is being recorded. I would ask yourselves, please, I'd ask you, please, to mute yourselves when you're not speaking. So can I ask you all now, please, to ensure you mute yourselves. We had an embarrassing situation a few events ago where everybody was hearing a probate conversation, which is not probably the best conversation to have broadcast to 60 people, but there you go. So also I'm going to be publicizing the feedback link, and I would ask you please to activate the feedback link. It'll be in the chat shortly. I'd ask you to activate the feedback link before you leave this meeting, so that you can just take a minute to complete the feedback. Polly and I are really keen to make sure that we're making these the best we can for you. So our process is going to be, I'm going to ask the question very shortly, give a little context on the question, and then we're going to quickly break into our breakout rooms, and from there we'll have about 20 minutes of conversation in our breakout room, about 10-minute plenary. We'll repeat that, and we've got our first 4x4 today, so our first online 4x4, which will be cool, and then a quick wrap up. Okay, so with that, the thing that fascinates me is that when there is a change, and I'm going back to the last one, I'm not going back to previous ones, but when there is a change in the world, lots of things change. And it seems to me that there's a lot more sort of caring language going around at the moment. And that got me thinking along the lines of prosperity versus profit. Now, profit's really critical, because without profit, you can't have a future in business. And it's really a question of that balance, I think, the balance between sort of a prosperity mindset, you know, which of course speaks to a bigger purpose beyond having a profit mindset, which is, you know, I will have my profits, and what I do with my profit then is for me, and I can be generous with my profit. But my business is all about profit. So I'm not saying that profit is bad. I'm saying that you know, is there a change? Is there a change moving away from I will create a foundation once I've made enough money to let's see if we can be a force for good whilst making money. So 3 questions there on the screen for you to be thinking about. You know, what is that sort of transition looking like for you guys in your experience, or with your clients, or just your own mindsets going around this stuff? What does it take actually to move from a pure profit mindset to more of a sort of a prosperity mindset? And you know, how can we make that sort of sustainable, really? And how can we make that sort of happen in such a way that it stands, you know, half a chance of surviving beyond, you know, beyond being a nice trial? So those are our questions. That's the framework for our conversation. And I'm going to sort of split us all now into rooms for the first time. I'll pop into a room every now and again just to see what's going on. I won't necessarily contribute to that conversation, but we'll have sort of 15, 18 minutes, getting up to 20 minutes for that conversation. Could I ask you please to nominate one person who is going to give the one insight from that conversation in response to anything around those three frameworking questions? They haven't got to be answering those specific questions, but just your thoughts from your room. And could I ask you to do that quite quickly so that we could then move on to our next breakout and the opportunity to discuss the same questions with a different group of people? Okay, I'm going to put you into rooms sort of automatically, so there's no pre-selection here, guys. I'm opening the rooms now, so I'll see you in about 18 minutes. Now we're starting to get some people back into the room.
Right.
There we go. All starting to come back in. Super. Okay. I think we're all back in, those of us who are around. So, insights of distinction. Room the first. Who's going to go first for a quick sort of 45-second, 60-second roundup of the insight that you've agreed to take away from your room?
I'm ready, Richard.
Go.
So we talked about the current situation, there being a tension between survival and making money, or achieving your purpose, and being prosperous. And many businesses, and there are a few examples in the room, many businesses will be struggling to survive, and that'll be more important than long-term prosperity. But then we kind of moved on the discussion on to, fundamentally your long-term purpose doesn't change, but the way you deliver it might change because of changes to your market, changes in demand, changes in cost factors, etc. And then I heard a quote the other week that said, profit sustains a business, it doesn't define it. Your purpose defines your business. So those are our thoughts.
Lovely. I love that last quote. Profit sustain business, it doesn't define your business. Thank you. Room the next.
I'll go.
Okay, Paul, off you go.
We spoke about team very much, actually, and about two-way communication, empowering them across the hierarchy, because we need to get them involved in what we do, and we're struggling online to get the same degree of shared experience, because obviously we came out with lots of cliches, being in the boat, moving in the same direction. And at this time, the boat's somewhat bigger than it was because the team is spread to the four winds. For us, it was important to have two-way communication to empower everybody across the organisation to move forward together.
Okay, thank you. So, cool. Paul Hopwell, I think you had your hand up as well for your table, did you? You're muted, Paul.
Sorry, Richard, we didn't have a table, but other than that, we did pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I would have it's Die Hard.
I had breakfast. Yeah, we kind of summarised it, I guess, by putting all of our threads together by saying that it was really important to have stakeholder engagement, stakeholders obviously including employees, clients and the wider community. So stakeholder engagement, but centred around a common higher purpose, to take Mark's point, and making sure that was our touchstone day to day rather than money, but also having a very broad range of KPIs or measures rather than just money, so that the hierarchy of our measures was much more balanced, enabling money not to trump everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that defines probably a core difference where your whole business model is directed towards a greater number of key stakeholders rather than shareholders and shareholder value. So we'll probably explore that shortly. Do we have another room?
Yeah, we have room 3, Richard.
Okay, Rob.
I'll just jump in there. Yeah, we had a good wide-ranging discussion, which I think one of our teams, Sally, summed up within about the first 2 minutes of starting. and that was you make more profit when you're enjoying it more. And we based our conversation around the fact that a lot of the change that's going to happen in the future will come from the bottom up, as Robin portrayed it. It'll be bottom up decisions, not top down, as we've had for so many years in the past. We then had a conversation around the mental impact this is going to have on people, and the fact that people have experienced COVID-19, whether it's in business or outside, will be scarred for life, very much like people were in the Great Recession back in the late 20s, early 30s, and the impact it had on our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. And finally, one of the points that was made, going back to the idea that this will come from the bottom up and we've got to actually serve all our stakeholders, it made me think of the Companies Act 06 being technical about this. Prior to that, the responsibility of directors was to the shareholders. After that, Section 172 came in, and the responsibility of directors was to all stakeholders. Yeah. And it's 14 years since that was enacted, and even large corporations are struggling to understand Section 172. So that's putting a sort of legalistic side to it. But basically, going back to Sally's point, more profit when you're enjoying it more.
Absolutely solid, and thank you for bringing that point out, Rob. We would we are the Institute of Directors, and the Companies Act and everything else is part of what we have to really sort of understand and know. And that whole thing about extending beyond shareholder value. Just as a point, does that apply to companies of a certain size, Rob, or does it apply to all directors in all companies?
All directors, all companies, executives and non-executives. And I've still sat on boards where chairmen have tried to tell us our responsibility is to shareholders. No, it's not. And if we can get Section 172 ingrained in our mind, it'll go a long way to helping us come out of this in terms of we need to consider all stakeholders. So sorry to be legalistic about that, but it's just one of those things we need to bear in mind because we have responsibilities as directors under the Companies Act.
Solid, super. Well, could I suggest then that as we go into our next mind share into our rooms, that we take our conversation around this from that position of Section 172 of the Companies Act and the fact that directors have a wider responsibility than just to shareholders under the law. And can we also explore some of the thoughts that were expressed earlier on, I think from room 2, around purpose does not change. And my challenge question there is, and I love that quote, profit sustains a business, it doesn't define a business. But my challenge is around, is purpose an overused hype, or is it actually built into the DNA of most organizations? So 2 frameworks on the same theme for your next bout of rooms. The implications of Section 172, and is purpose in reality with most businesses more than just something they have on their website, and does it go to the DNA of how their business is structured, their operating model, and everything else? So I'm going to put you into 2 rooms now, or into rooms again, and I'm going to let's see if I can recreate those rooms, recreate all rooms, all existing rooms have been replaced.
Have we had all the feedback? We haven't had feedback. I don't know how many rooms there were.
There were 5 rooms. Have we had all the feedback?
I've not fed back, but I don't know if anyone else hasn't.
Okay, go. Sorry, I do apologise. I thought I counted them all. Sorry. So
do you want me to go next?
Go for it.
No problem. So like the other rooms, I think we had a wide-ranging conversation. We touched on Mental Health Awareness Week and things. Obviously, that touches on work-life balance. We think at the moment there's an acceptance culture, certainly from our HR position. We're seeing people are agreeing things you perhaps wouldn't see before. So our sort of takeaway thought was around how long will that sort of balance last? Are we going to see a permanent change? Is it temporary? Will it be 6 months? Is it going to last for 2021 in terms of that? Because if we can get the work-life balance, I think going back to the other room, you know, you make more money when you're enjoying work. So I think it links back in nicely to their comment.
Okay, so and again that feeds back into the all stakeholder thing, doesn't it? And maybe back into the original sort of talk around, you know, maybe we're understanding for the first time the real impact of corporate comms. Yeah. Now I think then we've probably got another room, have we?
Yep. Hi, we have. We had a bit of a reflection on small companies and large companies, and how some of the corporate failures at the large end will be companies that have taken on huge amounts of debt, and that positively in our group, some small companies, some of our own that have done okay, and we mustn't feel bad about, you know, having had an okay pandemic. It's not all doom and gloom out there. I think Mark's quote was excellent. That sums up our discussion. But the only other point I felt pretty strongly is that we're going into a very dark time economically, no matter what anyone says, and we have to keep an eye on profit, because otherwise the entire foundation of sort of economic civilization is going to, you know, be unsustainable. The government has made such sort of deep offers across so many areas that actually we've got to keep an eye on profit as we come out. Otherwise, you know, we won't have businesses. So it's about balance too. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, profits do sustain a business, and you know, it's got to be held in that tension, and maybe that's the, you know, a challenge as we move forward around this stuff. So thank you, and apologies for miscounting. I'm going to put us into I'm going to recreate all those rooms now, so enjoy your conversation, and we will come back in about 15-16 minutes. So it does look like everybody is back with us, so super stuff. Okay, in quick order this time, please. 6 rooms I think we had. So room the first, please.
Right, that was our room, and I'm glad we're going first because I've now got a drill outside the window, so I'm going on mute as soon as I've covered our bit. So we had good discussion. A few points that came out was that there's not actually one answer to this. There are organisations that are every part of the spectrum, from paying absolute lip service to it to living and breathing it. We identified a number of industries where they are very much purpose driven and have been for a long time. So pharmaceuticals was mentioned as one. Also some of the public service is as well. The other point we picked up on was that organisations are going to be judged on their employee and community experience as we go through this period, and that will then influence, you know, who's successful and who's not. That leadership is all important to drive purpose. And then the final point was that around purpose can be lost if VC and private equity come into the business as their interest is profit. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, table the next.
Okay, so I think that was us in section 2, in number 2. So our discussion went along the lines of section 172 was really driving the prosperity agenda. It was bringing all the stakeholders in, and it's been around for a while. So we then thought, why not? And that's, you know, generalization, you know, what companies are not doing it and why not? And it might be because it's very hard to report against. It's much easier to report against numbers, profits, and all of those sorts of things, which led us to think about how could we measure prosperity if we were so driven in our purpose. And we thought the way we write strategy is probably the best way to do that, where you actually use much broader narrative, much greater description, descriptors, conditions on how you would expect people to act or react from across your stakeholder community. Then you can find the compromise in your purpose.
Cool stuff. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, table the next.
Let me jump in there then. So we had a great discussion about purpose. Really, that was the thing we focused on the most in our group. In our prior group, we'd also mentioned the fact that when it comes to who we are, and it's a silly illustration, but I think one that sticks in people's minds, that if you think about lemons, when they get put under pressure, what comes out is lemon juice. And if as leaders, what comes out of us when we get put under pressure is what is most important. And if, as John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership, then we as leaders need to have within us the right purposes and the right mentality and the right thinking. And so we need to continue to work on ourselves to have an impact on the whole team that we're leading and developing, as the organization will reflect us as leaders. But the sort of the summary sentence, if you like, from it all, which may not sound like it was related to purpose, but it is, that we came up with as a summary, was one that we'd heard recently, which was that this time of COVID should not be considered as an interruption, but as a disruption. That this isn't so much a pause button to say, let's go back to how it was, but an opportunity to say, actually, how can we go back to something that is better than it was before? How can we be more innovative and more better people, if you like? Therefore, our organizations be better people and better organizations.
Absolutely. And one thing we all know is that when there is a shock to the system, it never goes back to the way it was.
And we've got the choice of it being a negative or a positive, and we decided, as leaders, we need to view it as a positive, deal with some of the fear and bring some hope.
Absolutely. And that is the job of leadership right there. Table the next.
I'll go next. I don't remember which room number I was, but we answered the question, or looked at the question which was posed first, which purpose does not change, ! Is the way I put it down. I looked at it from the point of view of the macro scene, the influences it's going to have on our businesses. For example, I'll just list off a few of the issues that I've been learning from looking at podcasts by of the RSA in particular, being a fellow and at least one other on our group was also a fellow at the RSA. These are the sorts of drivers that are going to affect our businesses and the SME market. The global influences that are going to have an impact. I'll just list them off. Inequality is an increasing concern on the global scene. Resources, I'll put resources plundering, and examples of that are our data people take for free. Natural resources tend to get extracted from the ground without terribly much cost.
Yeah.
And people in the third world tend to be used as a natural resource that tends to be somewhat abused. The third one I've got is right taxation for everybody. There's an enormous variance in taxation burden on depending you're extremely wealthy or PAYE, etc. The fourth one is financialization of virtually everything we do, especially in the current scene. We've got growing debt, and that did get commented on by this group in the broader scene before we went into the micro rooms. We come into a point of peak capitalization where people don't particularly care, and I'm talking about global influences, not the micro influences. And then there was, I guess, a distrust of power, increasing distrust of power. Again, these are all themes that are coming out in the RSA interviews, which is in three areas: politics, civil service, and the financial sector.
Yeah, I'll have to rush you on, Simon. Sorry, mate.
And I think we've got the media. So all these impact profit. They will have an effect on our profit. Okay. They will affect our prosperity, and I think our purposes will have to change to adapt. I think this is a time frame over the next 5-10 years.
Super. And could I ask you to share the link to that particular thing with the RSA? I follow the RSA as well, so if you've got a link to that, that would be great. Put it into the chat, please.
It's an awful lot of webcasts, so I'll just share.
Oh, an awful lot. Okay.
I will.
Well, in that case, get that into the chat. Get that summary into the chat.
Okay.
Okay. Room the next.
I think that's us, or is it? Oh no, you go first, Clive.
No, and I'd have to bow for you.
I don't think you do, but okay, I'll just go so I get it over and done with. We spoke about purpose, not necessarily as overused hype, but the fact that it's just becoming more and more prevalent that you need it to show that you have a purpose in terms of things like tender processes and recruitment processes. but we asked whether it was really lived. And we were all sharing frustrations around the fact that, particularly as part of tender processes, we come up against other businesses who say that they've got this sense of purpose, and actually, are they living it? They may say, you know, we give £20,000 a year to charity, but is that purpose? That's charitable giving, but are they really living it? And whereas we're all living it, but how do we bring that to light? And actually, maybe it's just more important that we are living it, but it's then not helping us win business. And then we discussed that actually, as part of that tender process, is it then that the business that we're tendering for, if they're not recognising what we're doing and the fact that we bring it to light and the tender process doesn't allow for that, should we then does that recognise that them as a business isn't particularly living their purpose because they've not got those processes to be able to recognise what we're then doing? And effectively, it was just saying that, yes, there are a lot of businesses out there that say that they have this purpose. They use it to be able in different market situations, but that we felt that it was really important that we had a purpose that was throughout the business and that was really felt. But it's then how to make people realise that in situations where it does matter to us and that we need to make it matter to keep the business running.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Room the next.
Okay. Yes, indeed. I only found out I was feeding back about a second before we came back to the room. So
good.
This is going to be rather like the way Richard sings, really, without any real notes. We got locked into two conversations, really. One was about sort of surplus and profit, and whether profit was a dirty word or not. And in the charitable sector, we like to call it a surplus. So, and recognising that obviously none of our businesses, whether it's charities or businesses, can work without funds. And I guess the other thing we again sort of thinking about was really thinking about who our stakeholders, our shareholders are, and they all have an investment in that organisation, whether it's financial or just goodwill. And as a charity, obviously, you know, we don't have that financial investment as shareholders, but our shareholders are our clients that we support. And I think the purpose for us is meeting need, whether that's of our clients or indeed of our staff.
Cool. Thank you very much. Table the next. We don't have any other tables. Super. Okay, in that case, let's move on. So I'm going to bring us to just two of my heroes. I shall put these into the follow-up email. I commend both to you. They were both outliers at the time, and Hamdi Ulaya, who created Chobani over in the States, the Greek yogurt company, now $1.7 billion business. Just listen to his TED talk about how he set up his business and why he set up his business. Absolutely exemplary. And Vineet Nair, who's a hero of mine as well, the ex-CEO of HCL Technologies. He's the inventor of staff first, customers second, and building the inverted pyramid. Many people have been credited with that, but it was Vineet Nair who did that at CEO Technologies, now a $40 billion business. So putting purpose at the heart and the structure of a business is doable and is not soft and fluffy, but actually very hard, especially when you're dealing with tender requirements and everything else that we've been talking about. So I'm now going to pass over to Mandy. Mandy is going to be speaking with us in the 4x4, 4 minutes. Mandy, if you're ready, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to make sure that Mandy is actually a co-host at the moment. Let me see if Mandy's a co-host. Did I make Mandy a co-host?
No, you didn't. I can't get on.
Let me just find you, Mandy. I knew I was going to mess up on one thing.
Or you show my charts and it's fine.
Okay, so why don't I show your charts and we'll do that. So Mandy, there you go.
Are the charts up, Richard?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to talk just very quickly about going plural. And the first chart is a bit of context for me, just to set the scene so you understand, well, you know, why should I talk about going plural? So just under 40 years in corporate, working for lots of well-known food companies and then going into publishing. And then I decided that actually I always had this aim sort of that I would end up doing a portfolio career or going plural. And so 2.5 years ago, I set on that journey. And as you can see, I now do a number of things, from being an independent consultant to a board trustee, volunteering for lots of things. And I'll talk about that next. So next chart, please, Richard.
Okay.
Right, so going plural, I think the first thing you ought to do is really have a big think and planning about why do you want to do it? What do you want from it? You know, important reason why lots of us do it is life balance. So really thinking out, well, how much work do I actually want to do? What financial requirement do I have? You know, how much do I need to earn? Very important, what are you passionate about? What are your personal interests? And then what are your core skills and capabilities? Because on a portfolio, you inevitably want that mix. So I love that quote. I mean, it totally sums up what I end up doing. Some for money, some for interest, some for pleasure, and some for a cause. And they all fit together. So next chart. Now, when people talk about a portfolio or going plural, what most people think about is building a portfolio of NED/trustee roles. Now, the role of a NED is very different to that of an executive, and that's the first thing to really think about. So you have to be really flexible. Yes, you're very accountable. And you're there to support and challenge the boardroom, but you're not there to execute, and you're not there making the decisions, really. So you need to be independent and objective. Absolutely need to have integrity. Oh, no, can you go back?
Okay.
So just I've listed there some useful sources. The most important thing, network, build relationships. Then there's some really interesting things that both are a mix of where you can find roles and useful information. So new roles and online site. I pick out women on boards for those women who are thinking about wanting to develop a portfolio. Excellent organisation, which gives you a lot of help. Obviously, the IoD gives you lots of help. Headhunters, not so good. You might get lucky and find a job through them. It's really thinking through what you want to do. Right, next chart, please, Richard. So this is the key thing, as I've said, very different to an executive role. You've got to be able to step back and ask questions. You have to have the right CV, either have it written or professionally written. Very good to start in a voluntary capacity, it adds credibility to your role. Because it's that chicken and egg, you need a NED role to get a NED role. If possible, get a NED role whilst you're still doing a day job. When you're looking at a company, very important that you undertake due diligence. You are going to be responsible for the performance of that business. So you mustn't undertake and join a business lightly. So you really got to understand it. And also very important that you get on with the chair and your other trustees. And recognise most organisations want round pegs in round holes. They will not take risks with NEDs. You know, they're not going to go, well, that's interesting. They might bring something different. They want someone who brings the experience and knowledge to their business that they, so in my case, you know, commercial expertise. And it takes a lot of time to build a portfolio, and it takes a lot longer than you think it's going to as well. But it's fantastic learning. You have to go into it being prepared to learn. It's a very different journey to an executive career, but it's a lot of fun as well. You get to do lots of different things, which are great fun. That's it. Only
Thank you so much. Well done, Mandy. 3 minutes and a half. Well done.
Well, there you go. But if anyone wants to talk more about plural, then Richard's got my contact details.
Yeah.
Very happy to chat to anyone about it.
Really solid. Thanks, Mandy. Board experience shining right through there. Thank you so much. So we're coming towards the end of our meeting today. I did say it'd be 8:59-ish, and in the best traditions of the 8:59, it's probably going to be 8:63 or something. We do have our mental health ambassador in Clive Stone, and he's on the meeting today. Thank you so much, Clive. So for your company, for yourself, do make use of Clive, and the IODMH sort of hashtag at IOD.com is a good resource. Mandy mentioned the IOD for board experience information. The IOD NED portal is very good, and we have a massive champion in our chair, Charlotte Valor. Link up with Charlotte, because she is very seriously committed to total diversity and good to connect with. So feedback is the food of champions, and I would ask you to click on the link in the chat. It's one or two sort of chats up now in the chat. Could I ask you please to click on that chat link and just complete that 1 minute chat, 1 minute survey before you move away to whatever else you're going to be doing today. It will help Polly and I to make sure that we're making these things the best they can be for you, because, you know, we do it for you guys. So help us to help you make it better. And with that, really, the only other things to point out are a couple of parish notices. If you think you've got something that you can share with the community through this medium, then please do let me know, and we'll be happy to run events within our sort of online events. All of our 4x4 speaker slots for this year are full, but if you want to be considered for a 4x4 slot for 2021, then please let me know. Next month we see our AMM is going to be a virtual AMM, and that'll be shortly after the 8:59. So I think we'll probably start the AMM by a separate meeting at 9:10 or something. Members of the IOD are welcome to join the AMM. And with that, another sort of plea, please get the evaluation form completed, because it does help us. And all that remains for me now to say at 8:68 is thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you for sharing some of those insights. I've made some amazing notes. I'll try and capture some of that content, some of your wisdom and your insights in my wrap-up email. If you've got anything that you want to add, then please do either tap it into the chat, and I'll share the chat file as well, or drop me an email and I'll include it. And I saw Simon, thank you so much for your share of what you presented there. That would be really, really useful. So with that, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay strong, and look, have a great Friday and an excellent weekend. And my best wishes to all of you for you know, the weekend ahead, and then the next week of trying to make stuff happen in our businesses. So rock on.